Welcome back, everybody. This is Trailing Spouses. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the different type of expat that you get in Taiwan.
Yes.
Particularly because we now know that there's different types of expats that you can get here. You can get trailing spouses, of course, but they also come in different umbrellas and different situations. One, you can be a government employee like myself. My spouse is a diplomatic expat, so that differs in terms of the benefits, in terms of perhaps some of the excesses that we have, in terms of educational opportunities for our children and other things, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because I often get the question of, okay, how did you get here? And people that are considering, I want to live abroad, but how do I go about it?
Right.
And so, yes, there are different ways in which you go about the expat route or living abroad. And so you're a diplomatic expat. I'm a corporate expat. And what that means is like company sponsored. And there are actually two subcategories of being company sponsored that I've encountered. There are, in the traditional sense of a corporation in the business context. And then there's also school sponsored. So sometimes the international schools are companies themselves, they're corporations as well, and they will sponsor a teacher or someone to come over. Again, it's sponsored by another entity, a company, a corporation, or a school corporation, and those have different benefits, if you will, assistance that you have from a corporate perspective. So my husband's job is what brought us over in his promotion, both here and in London. And you get assistance, as you mentioned, with educational opportunities. They send you on a trip both times for us to go house hunting, to go interview at schools. You have a lot of assistance with landing here. Still a lot that you have to undertake yourself, but they do help. For example, I have friends who moved here but didn't have the assistance of packing and their home goods, their furniture. They had to start all over when they arrived here. With us, we had our household belongings, half of them shipped over here. The other half we put in storage. The company provides assistance for that. Depending on what level you're at in particular companies, you can have a driver. When we were living in London, we didn't have a driver. I learned to drive on the other side of the road.
Isn't that amazing?
UK, watch out, okay? But I got my UK driver's license, which I found to be extremely difficult and a huge accomplishment. I still have my license.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. You don't want to see me on the other side of the road, but hey, I can do it. But those are the type of things that you have to consider. They give us hours of Mandarin lessons, so foreign lessons, cultural assimilation lessons. You get a lot of assistance with landing here. And then you have, I think the other category is sort of the self-led category.
The self-led.
Yeah, self-led, meaning you lead yourself to this journey. You're
Right.
like, I'm just
yeah,
I'm just gonna go and figure it out. I'm gonna go to
when I
this
figure it
place.
out when I get there.
Figure it out when I get there, and it works for some people. I know a lot of people that did that. This is all pre-COVID-19, however, because
COVID changed a lot of things and a lot of regulations,
Yes.
and a lot of the requirements. But pre-COVID, yes, people were kind of just basically what you're saying is getting a tourist visa,
yes,
and then hopping on a plane, coming to Taiwan, and then hoping that in those 3 months or whatever months that tourist visa is due, they will connect with other people,
Yeah.
and then find opportunities of employment however they can, and then
and even if they didn't,
convert that
Yeah, they
to a
could-
work visa.
they could convert it to a work visa. But even if they didn't, let's say that in the first night, because here in Taiwan, you could, before COVID, you could land here on a visitor's visa for
Right.
90 days, stay here. But let's say you didn't find anything, you wanted to stay longer. All you have to do is leave, go to another country, and come back, and the
And get
90
the
days
same
starts over again.
visa.
That was before COVID. That does not exist right now. So the self-led option, I don't know about other countries. Most countries are following suit. That does not exist right now as an opportunity. And so the self-led, but when the world opens back up again, that is a possibility because you can, go and figure it out. You need to consider lifestyle.
Yeah.
You need, the type of person you are. Me, a woman of my particular age, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm not going anywhere and try to figure it out. I need to know where I'm laying my head. I'm not going to stay at a hostel for any amount of time and figure out anything. I'm not going to go to another country. I have children, a husband. That's just not my life. However, that really does work for a lot of people. I have a lot of friends, and it worked for them. So
you also have to consider the student expat. Those are the people who come to Taiwan on student visas to actually go to institutions of higher learning, especially university. So they come here to do their university, maybe it's 5 years or 4 years, and then once they're done with their education, they decide to stay on longer.
Yes.
So they gain employment locally and then they stay, but they're forever kind of seen as the student expats, and that comes into lifestyle, like you say, because then you might find that they're actually more or less in the same age group, but the lifestyle demands and the lifestyle desires are quite different.
Yes. And it's different, I think, too, when you are single. Maybe age may play a factor into it, but certainly if you have children, that's a different conversation, a different consideration in terms of assistance, in terms of finding places for your kids to be educated.
Right.
That's a totally different undertaking. So I think people have to consider how much support they want in the journey, how much support they need. There are a lot of blogs, a lot of websites. They give a lot of assistance, even if you're self-led, and even if you are sponsored by a company. All company expat policies are very different. Very different. I have some friends working in some companies, and I was like, girl, I don't know how you did it, because I couldn't have come over here if somebody didn't help me to find a home. Some people get help and assistance in finding a home, and some people, they leave it up to them.
Yeah.
And so, it just depends on what your policy is. Research your policy. I had a friend that had a job offer with her company to go live abroad in a position, and she had me review with her policy and what it meant. And I was living in London at the time. When I started explaining to her what it meant, she was like, no, never mind.
Yeah, and I think
it
it actually has to do with the country too.
Yes.
Because in some countries, they're corporate sponsored expat kind of like positions, they're really strict, and when you have to review them, you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. No.
Sometimes it ends up costing you more. There's no financial, it used to be this big financial windfall. Those days are really long gone, but if, for example, when we moved to London, the company at that time bought our home. Very few companies are still doing that because they're not in the real estate business. That's usually not happening at this point in time. We still own our home that we have in the U.S. now, and we're renting it out. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. So you have to think about, what are you going to do with your children? What are you going to do with your car?
Right.
What are you going to do with the home that you have? All of those things are things you have to consider, and who's going to assist you with that, if anyone.
Yeah, because that's great. When you actually uproot and you leave and you have all these other responsibilities, it's so important to have somebody who's going to assist you even back home, because those things will need somebody to keep an eye on. You cannot put everything into storage. So you'll need somebody to help you manage your property. You'll need somebody to help you maybe even wait for a couple of months until you get your car sold, if that's what you want to do. You will need somebody to, sometimes you're not moving right at the time where school's open, so you might need to leave before your kids get there, or you might need to stay back before kids get into school. Or when you get to Taiwan especially, it might not be the right window of time for kids to get into school. So you might also then need to fill in that. It's a whole different ball game. It's a different type of aspects that we don't really.
I homeschooled for a whole semester my daughter when we first arrived here, because the schools were at capacity. We had very short notice. And that's the other thing. You need to think about applying for schools. How far in advance do you need to apply? Because, in London, you're not really applying, you're registering. It's not competitive as it is in other places. You just really register. Your kids are going to start, they're going to get in. Here, there are capacity issues. It's extremely competitive. No one had space for Kinsley. And so my son got in because they had space for him. My daughter, they were at full capacity. I homeschooled for a whole semester. And you need to think about whether or not you have that anointing, because it is an anointing.
It's a blessing.
It's a blessing.
You need it.
Yeah.
You
I
need
don't
it.
have it. We learned that the hard way. I love my daughter. Just because you have children doesn't necessarily mean, my mother's a teacher, 32 years. You know, my
Right.
father's in higher education, he's a vice chancellor. I come from education, and I get it. It is an anointing, it's a calling. But as a mom, you need to think about whether or not that's truly your gifting. And if it's not, because kids come with birth certificates, not teacher certificates, okay? It's not automatic, just saying. She wants to learn how to draft a mean contract. Holla at your girl. In the meantime, we have different learning styles, and you need to think about what type of support, tutors, that sort of thing, in-home teachers. What type of support are you going to need for your children, and who's going to assist you with that?
Right.
It's a real thing.
Here's one thing I want to ask you. So now that you've landed in Taiwan, let's just say, and you're realizing that there are different types of foreigners living here, and different types of personalities, and different types of lifestyle demands and desires. What advice would you give to somebody who's coming in at the different levels with different perspectives of being a foreigner? How do they assimilate, and how do they find their tribe, find their people, that little support system within that community?
That is really, really important and really, really complex. And I think the older you are, the more complicated it becomes, because you may have children and other factors. Obviously, we always like to gravitate towards people that are like us.
Right.
But within even your group, you know, not all foreigners are monolithic. We're not a monolithic group. I think it's important to be open to meeting new people, but then at the same time being authentic to yourself, because just because you want to be an expat doesn't mean it changes your personality type. If you are an introvert, you're not going to all of a sudden just become an extrovert just because you're in another country. If anything, it may make you even more, retreat even more, because it's change and you're navigating change. I think for me, it was recognizing that whatever way I needed to navigate the change is okay. If I do not want to go out and I don't want to attend everything that I'm invited to, it doesn't mean that I'm antisocial. And it is okay for some of my single friends that don't have children, that are foreigners here. I can't go hang out and party with y'all all weekend long. I might come once a quarter, and that has to be okay.
Right.
And so you meet different types of people, doesn't change your personality. And so give yourself permission to be your authentic self, foreigner.
Okay, I like that. Be your authentic self, foreigner, in whatever space you're in, or however you actually land, wherever you're landing. Keep it true to you, without the pressure of the others who are already there or who are incoming too.
Yes, and how they do their foreign life may not necessarily work for you.
It looks different for everybody.
It does. Or you can learn a lot. I have different social groups here. I cherish my ladies at lunch. I cherish the people that are single that I'm going to go out to an event with. I cherish the people that come from different countries, different backgrounds, those who are teaching, those who are, trailing spouses like myself. I think it makes your life, for me, it makes my life a lot richer, but then I do have to be authentic to myself. And some days I want to go lunch with the ladies, and some days I just want to take a nap and do nothing. And that's okay.
That's true. That's true. That's very true. I also think that it's important to have that wider spectrum of a social life if you're going to be doing the foreign living thing in any country. You need to be okay with different social circles, and at the same time you also need to be okay with saying, okay, not today, not today, not today. I love you all, but not today. And I think that's what actually builds up the relationship respect.
Yes.
In all those little social circles. And of course, I think from a diplomatic point of view, it's very different. I think for a lot of diplomatic spouses, it's easier to live in a diplomatic bubble. Because you're all thrown in the same organizations and same activities so often that you neglect to make friends outside of that.
Yes.
So when you manage to make friends outside of that bubble, it's great.
Yes. It's the same for corporate expats. we can stay within our world, especially if you have like companies that have a lot of expats that are here. So you can have 10 or 15 people that are on foreign assignment and are expats, and you can only congregate with those few people. And if you never branch out, you miss the beauty of other people, other personalities. But then there's also support that comes from those communities as well.
There is.
Yeah, so balance. Balance is good.
Balance. That's what we're taking away from this?
I think so, yes.
Balance and knowing when to just be the different type of you.
That's right. Different and authentic. This has been Trailing Spouses. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to tune in every week, and we appreciate the viewership. Bye.